Chapter 1681. Trap the Elf. A sharp whistle caught Carl's attention, and one of the elves waved them over to the beach, where they were preparing breakfast for everyone working in the area and the ones who liked to sleep near the beach. There were actual houses here, closer to huts or yurts than a permanent structure, but that was what the druids and clerics preferred. They were also more comfortable in the humid heat of the region. They also apparently found that the new clothes Ray made for them were highly comfortable. They were breezy, did not trap heat, but kept the morning sun off your body. They were too thin to help much with the afternoon sun, but the elves on kitchen duty didn't mind. They were used to moving into the shade to work. "What exactly have you dressed your elves as?" Elder Douglas asked as he saw them starting to plate up dinner for the hatchlings. "It's something that Ray made. You see, I met an elder from some pavilion sect and admired her outfit. But so did Ray, and now she's made it in green for the residents here." The elder nodded solemnly. "I may have underrated the truly cultured upbringing of Lady Ray." "What's cultured upbringing mean?" Tenna asked from her spot in Carl's arms. "It means she has a great appreciation for all things artistic." The little dragon nodded, filing that information away. Then she hopped down to rush over for the meat trays that the chefs were setting out. They had roasted some and left others raw, so Tenna could pick through to find her favorites. Watching the little dragons tearing into a huge pile of meat, some of them ravenous, some delicate, was entertaining in a way that Carl hadn't expected. But the older that they got, the more that they were developing their own personalities. At first, it was always hungry or sleepy. Now they were starting to develop hobbies. And with hobbies came the chance to do all sorts of new things. For example, the little ones were planning a swimming competition later, with the water species against the swamp species. They had a budding rivalry going, now that they had met each other and realized that they were very similar but had different tastes. Among young dragons, everything could be made into a challenge. Carl and the elder were enjoying breakfast on the beach when a bleary-eyed Anilla came over with Shade, her divine moor-cat. They had obviously been training all night long, and the girl looked exhausted. "Good morning, Mr. Carl. I think I need some help leaving. My mom is really mad that I didn't come back last night and didn't send her a proper message, other than a system message that I was training." Carl laughed. "Well, if you're going to get your ass hooped, you might as well do it on a full stomach. Have breakfast first, and then I will bring you to your mother and cover for you. Don't worry, I'm pretty good at it." The young half-elf smiled. "Thanks, Mr. Carl. This place is pretty good. Look at that buffet." Shade gasped when he saw that there was a whole assortment of raw meat set out. How could he compare the buffet at the clan's kitchens to this? It might be lower ranked than what was served in the clan kitchen, but there were so many kinds of raw meat here. The clan kitchen never had good fresh meat. They cooked everything. "Do you have plans for the day?" Elder Douglas asked as he finished his meal. "Other than saving Anilla? Not really. I was thinking of upgrading the training ground, though. We've got all these young dragons itching for something to do, and they're going to be starting lessons soon. So, giving them somewhere to go train in safety would make everyone's life easier. A sleepy dragon is a quiet dragon." Douglas chuckled. "The clan does the same thing for the students. That's why every day at primary school starts and ends with a gym class. One is for the teachers, the other is for the parents." Carl hadn't thought about that. Leo went to school every day, and Carl knew that his last class was a combat training one. But he hadn't realized that there was one in the morning. It's fitness in the morning. Jogging, climbing, strength training, then a shower. Kara mentally informed him. That made sense. Burn off the morning hyper. Actually, I might make a few new training areas. The academy that I went to and the Darklight Host Guild House could both use new ones. They're in a mortal world, so an immortal rank training area doesn't have to be particularly strong to hold up against anything that even the strongest of them could throw at it. I gave them one just before I reached immortality, but that doesn't help the other myths much. It takes too much mana to stabilize the arena if they're fighting in it. The arena. He should make some upgraded barriers for that as well. It would let them have the strongest of the locals fight, instead of limiting them. It would be a lot of work and a mana conversion array, as there was little to no immortal energy in that world, other than what had leaked in during the attacks. Not enough to support the array if they had myths fighting in it. Even the 90% reduction that came from the rank difference wouldn't be enough with so little ambient immortal energy. But he could convert it from mortal mana, and the barriers would be self-sustaining. As warehouse elder, Douglas was quite interested to see the process of making a training area for the strongest mortals. It would be amazing for the children in the clan as well, and if it was all that Carl made it out to be, he would purchase one for the school. Sure, it might not be good for adults, but the power level of the kids wasn't on that level. Or perhaps he could make one with mazes and mental puzzles? He could do that with his illusionary domain, and keeping the kids' minds occupied was just as important as building strength. Too many immortals focused entirely on growing their power and ended up isolated, with extremely niche levels of knowledge. Chapter 1682. Transparent Ideals. Alright, let's go see Anila's mom, and then I will be right back. Do you need to go back to work, Elder? Or would you like to remain here for a while? Any of my beasts, or the Dana Mage, can send you back whenever you request. Carl offered. I will remain here for a while. I've already updated the roster to cover shifts for Min, and I don't go in every day unless there are special items coming in. Most of the time, I am working on my own progression as I'm trying to make it to Peak Immortal. Staying here for a while to help bring in the knowledge needed for the young dragons is more important. Plus, it might help me with whatever I've been missing. I know that there is something I've overlooked, but I have no idea what it is, he sighed. Carl nodded. There is nothing worse than being aware of your own ignorance. Not knowing is fine, but once you know that you don't know, it's just another form of torture until you find out what it is that you didn't know. In a way, I sympathize with the blue dragons on that front. Douglas laughed. I am with you on that one. Their life is one of quiet agony. In the Xylaz Alliance house, Sapphire sneezed. She was certain that someone was talking about her. But Kara had brought her a book about the fundamental rule of lightning, and she was busy copying it as she studied it. It was like making notes for her own research, but because she was copying the book, she couldn't skip anything, even the repetitive parts. Hopefully, that would help her comprehension. According to the system, she was over 80% of the way through the process already, but she didn't know how far this book went. Only that Kara brought it to her, and it was meant as a school textbook. The immortal world was really on a different level. They taught their children to comprehend the fundamental rules, something that was considered impossible for mortals, even ones that were about to reach the totem rank, to successfully do. Of course, now that Carl had broken all the previous records, she was reconsidering the common wisdom on the topic. But she didn't have enough resources to begin testing that hypothesis yet. If she could get Kara to bring her a whole set of textbooks for elements, she could at least bring them to the orphanage and have the dragons study them. The other species might have varying affinities, but the dragons were quite predictable. On top of the loot pile in her space, Kara rolled over and checked her mirror, looking at the random image that popped up. Yes, that looked like a fun future. She would give the blue dragons a set of textbooks. To think, the ever-so-organized Sapphire had an idea that would cause so much chaos. She left her space and went to the dining hall in the mountain's underground village so that she didn't have to face bright lights before breakfast. Only to find herself nose-to-nose with Ewan. Sister Kara, my god says that you're doing fun things. Can I come? Kara patted the little dragon on the head. You need to learn to distinguish between now and later. The fun part comes later. First, there is a lot of work and studying for everyone to do. She explained. The little dragon frowned. I don't get it. In his mind, there was only now. If there was fun stuff happening, didn't that mean he should be going? What was later? That word seemed like it was intended to make him miss the fun stuff. Fine, I will show you about the concept of advanced preparation. This will be important to you too, even though your god is not one of chaos. Kara agreed. Stealing a baby dragon was always entertaining. The clan members loved baby dragons, and Tenna already had a turn. She was not stealthy, though. By the time that she arrived at breakfast with a little dragon waddling behind her, Tessa already knew what the badger was up to. There was no situation that involved Kara making friends with a hatchling of the death god that didn't involve extreme consequences. The look on her face told Kara that she had miscalculated. It would be better to send someone else to the library to get the books. If they sent them to Sapphire, nobody would link them back to her, and they wouldn't suspect that she was trying to start trouble. She needed coffee. She was off her game this morning. All right, before we go, I am going to show you something amazing. Kara whispered, just loud enough that Tessa and Naksha could hear her. Then, she poured coffee into a small bowl for Ewan, and the two women moved to intercept. Oh no, you don't. No fully caffeinated hatchlings unless you're planning to take care of them until the energy is burn off. Naksha warned.
Deal.
Ewan, try the morning happy juice. It's the good stuff. Even Lotus loves it. Tessa rolled her eyes at Kara's enthusiasm. Lotus was restricted from caffeine intake for the same reason that the hatchlings were. Ewan quickly poured the hot black liquid into his mouth before anyone could change their minds. It was too hot, nearly burning his tongue. But that flavor, and zing! Oh, he could see why even Lotus would love this so-called morning happy juice. But why couldn't they have it every day? Was it a rare resource, restricted to just the adults? Sister Kara really was good to him. Once the coffee was gone, he filled his belly just slowly enough that he didn't give himself a stomachache, and then waited for Kara to finish eating. All right, off we go. We're going to go somewhere very special today. Kara informed her partner for the day. Where is that? We're going to the bookstore. Ewan wasn't sure why that was fun, but he was willing to go along with it. What he didn't know yet was that Kara intended to go to the bookstore in the trade market near the docks, the ones under the supervision of Elder Malcolm, the sea trade elder. They should have whole sets of textbooks, as the clan exported them. All she needed was just one set for the guild, and then they could explore the street market. And once they got back, she would give the books to Thor so he could give them to Sapphire. Nobody ever suspected Thor. Chapter 1683. Caught black-handed. Unfortunately for Kara, Carl was paying attention to her thoughts, and the moment that she stepped out of the tiny world and into the apartment, she found him standing there with Anila, waiting for her to appear. Going somewhere? Why don't you come with me instead? I will help you get what you needed, and we can show this curious young dragon how to give a proper apology to an angry mother. Ewan frowned. That sounds dangerous, but I don't sense imminent violence. That's why you need to learn. Trust me, violence happens if you do it wrong. That sounded promising to Ewan. If his god had faith that Carl knew how to navigate this situation without dying, then this was something that he needed to know. It was all about keeping the order, the balance between life and death. But who knew that mothers could be so scary? He didn't have much experience with them, but even Naksha, the highest ranking of black dragons in the nest, wasn't intending to kill them. Or perhaps the danger was if you stole one of the hatchlings without warning. Was that what the woman thought they did with the elf hatchling? If that was the case, then he could totally see why there was a real danger of them being attacked by the angry mother dragon. Or was she a dragon? Probably an elf, right? Anila was an elf. Or was it Shade's mother they were apologizing to? There were so many things that he didn't know yet, and all of them needed to be quantified and organized so that he could make proper risk assessments. How could anyone function without knowing the danger level of the things they were doing? Sure, he liked to escape from the nest, but that was definitely a low-risk activity. Besides, he usually went to where Carl was anyhow, and Carl was a safe zone. And that was how Kara got roped into going with Carl and the elf to show Ewan a bit more of how the world worked. Not that they had to go far. Elder Xiaobai was waiting at the door with a thunderous look on her face, having tracked her daughter to the apartment, which she couldn't enter with the extra barriers on it. And where nobody was answering the door. Sorry about that, Elder. We can't hear the front door from the training area. Would you like some breakfast? I do apologize for taking time out of your day. Carl began. Those sounded like good words to Ewan, but the one called Elder wasn't looking any happier. Moms were a high-difficulty challenge. I should be able to project sound into the illusion behind you without any issues. The Elder noted. And I would note that while the tracking spell definitely says you have 3 elders in here, I don't sense any of them in the room. They're helping me with the training area. Carl explained. You do understand that you cannot keep humans as pets, yes? The Elder asked sarcastically. The Death God only said that he can't have a baby dragon. Ewan offered helpfully, not understanding the issue. The Elder's scowl faded as she ducked down to put herself on the black dragon's level. And why can the Carl not have a baby dragon? She asked in a soft and curious tone, clearly used to dealing with the random comments of children.
Dunno.
He's kind of warm and friendly, but the black dragon says that he definitely can't have a baby dragon. You speak with your patron? Only one time so far. They yelled at me and told me that the Carl wasn't allowed to have a baby dragon. I just wanted to see what Sister Kara's loot pile looked like. That raised as many questions as it answered. Fortunately, Elder Xiao Bai already had a good idea how the class worked, so she understood that the pile was likely actual loot in a separate space for the bonded beasts. Naturally, the badger would have to put all the treasures it obtained somewhere. Well, I suppose that the Carl has a lot of bonded beasts already. So, perhaps he's all full, and there's no room for a dragon? You'll just have to grow up on your own, big and strong. The elder assured him. Yuan laughed. Everyone gets big and strong around the Carl. Even the alchemy guy likes visiting. I think that the warehouse elder just likes elves, though. Elder Xiao Bai let out a quick burst of laughter. Pardon? I don't think I understood that right. The Douglas elder made friends with all the elves who are about to be immortals last night. Some of the obsession demons, too. But he definitely likes the elves better. Carl was doing his best not to laugh at the dragon's earnest explanation, as even Anila was nodding along. The elder patted the little dragon on his head. I understand the feeling. I also like elves. Anila's father is an elf, you know? Now, what brings you out here this morning? Sister Kara said that she would take me out to do fun stuff, and then we met with the Carl, who was bringing Anila back. But he didn't say whether it was her mom or Shade's mom who was the scary one. It must be Shade's mom. Xiao Bai gave Carl a really type of look and then turned to her daughter. Oh, he meant me. But I'm only scary when someone is in trouble. And my daughter is in trouble for skipping school again without warning and for not telling me that she was going into a separate space to train. We have a rule about this because Shade has a separate space as well. The little dragon sat silently, mentally calculating the answer, with a confused expression on his face that made it impossible for the elder to remain mad at anyone. He was just so eager to find out how everything worked. Maybe we should put a chalkboard by the door? There is one in the underground schoolroom, and the red dragons use it for all sorts of checklists. I bet it could be used to tell people who is in and who is gone. Once you grow up, you'll learn the joys of system messages. Now, I need to bring my daughter to school, even if she's late. It was a pleasure to meet you, Yuan. Carl, I will speak to you later. I need to speak with Elder Socrate as well. Carl nodded. The tiny world was a terribly kept secret at this point, so he might as well just keep it locked down. That was better than trying to pretend that it didn't exist. Chapter 1684. Yuan understands. The elder took Anila away, and Yuan turned to Kara. I get it now. Moms are only scary in private. They're nice when other people are around, and then you get in trouble in private so they don't embarrass you in front of your friends. Kara shrugged. You're not entirely wrong. Now, it's time for us to explore while the Carl gets back to the important parts of his day, like keeping the elders happy and the elves fully dressed. Yuan laughed. But it's work time. If you're going to be muddy anyhow, why would you wear clothes? The badger laughed. They have taught you well, young dragon. Carl picked up Yuan. You're not leaving me behind on this adventure, little one. Let's go find ourselves a bookstore so that we can keep the blue dragon happy. Yuan extended a claw forward, eager to get moving. To the bookstore, with the energetic dragon trying to see everything as he shifted to drape himself over Carl's shoulders, the group made their way toward the gates. Naturally, that attracted more than a little bit of attention. Black dragon hatchlings were not a common fashion accessory. Plus, Yuan was excited about everything, so it was obvious that he was newly hatched and hadn't seen anything before. People, buildings, even two cats fighting over a field mouse were all noteworthy to the little dragon. Where are we going first? I smell books in some of those stores. Yuan asked. We're going to go see the trade elder first. He will likely know where we can get a full set of books, instead of borrowing them one at a time from the library. That's not going to work for 100 hatchlings.
Carl explained.
Yuan giggled at the thought of all of them trying to share one book at a time. That would not work at all. What is his name? Or is it a her? It can't be Anila's mom. Or you would have asked earlier, are they friendly? Will there be a fight?
I can sense something small dying.
Oh, over there too. I think it's the mice. The morning crowd in the streets smiled at Ewan's narrative, and Carl noticed that a few had changed direction to discreetly follow them. Likely not for malicious reasons, but you could never be too careful. Elder Malcolm was near the docks this morning. Carl could sense his aura over the others as they made their way through the clan.
He was surrounded by people, though.
Meaning it might not be a short wait to see him. That's what Ewan was for. Bringing a cute thing that asked incessant questions tended to get you to the front of most lines. Look, even the trading elder likes cute elves. Is that a thing? The dragon asked as Carl moved to wait with the others who wanted the elder's attention. Between them and Elder Malcolm was the crew of a blue elf ship, who had all turned to see, who was implying things about their captain. Once they realized that it was a hatchling black dragon, the elves just laughed. Most people are afraid of us, little dragon, the first mate informed them, smiling with one eye hidden under a black metal patch. Why is that? I understand being afraid of her. Ship moms are likely as scary as other moms. But why do they think you're scary? The first mate gently rubbed Ewan's head. I forgot how awesome black dragons are. They are afraid because we're stronger than they are. Being around stronger people who aren't part of your team scares people with weak minds. Ewan frowned. That didn't make sense. But the strong people have all the good knowledge and the food. That is good logic for a young dragon, but once you are further from your nest, you will find that the world is not so nice. But you're a black dragon. You'll understand naturally soon. It's one of the things that your god will teach you. Oh, my god already taught me a thing. Well, 2 things. The important thing was that there is a balance. We're supposed to be nice to the nature dragons because they represent life, making new things so that death doesn't get bored. The sailors chuckled at his interpretation. Yes, nature priestesses are quite popular for that reason. Have you met any succubi yet? They do the same job for demons that nature priestesses do for the dragon gods. Ewan nodded. I met one already, but I haven't seen her lately. She dragged a berserker back to her apartment, and they haven't come back out. That one's not a succubus. She's a different sort of obsession demon, and just likes berserkers. Kara explained helpfully. Oh, like the elder likes elves? More than that.
She
really likes berserkers. More than cupcakes? Maybe not that much. Cupcakes are pretty good. The first mate nodded, playing along. It's hard to argue against cupcakes. He would have to ask the badger later to tell him the full story of whatever berserker had been captured and dragged off by one of the local demons. That sounded like the sort of story that they could make into a drinking song. Elder Malcolm waved them forward without dismissing the captain he was talking to. Carl, I think that you two need to meet. But first, did you need me for something? I need a full set of student textbooks on the fundamental rules, as well as basic education. I have agreed to help educate a large group of hatchlings. Ewan waved at the elder. Hi. Do you like cupcakes more than berserkers? Yes, I must say that cupcakes are better than berserkers, given the option. I also have the textbooks that you need. The scribes have some in storage, and I assume that you have the clan credits to buy them, so it won't be a cash transaction. Carl shrugged. Either way is fine. I have money as well. Yes, I would imagine that you are not short on cash. I will have them delivered to your house this afternoon. Now, the captain has a request for you. If you would prefer, I can arrange somewhere soundproof for you to talk. Carl shrugged. Her ship should be right there. Nobody would dare to eavesdrop on us there. Ewan giggled. He saw much potential in someone eavesdropping. Or his god did. Chapter 1685. Off to a rocky start. In that case, I will thank you in advance for the delivery, and we will be off. Carl informed Elder Malcolm, who waved them away, knowing that he had a huge amount of work left to do for the day. He had a pretty good idea of what the captain wanted, as he had upgraded the captain's quarters on another ship belonging to an elven captain. That was why he suggested going directly back to her ship. They would need to be there to do the upgrade anyhow, so it was better and more discreet if everyone listening in thought that they were only going there to make the deal. Then someone would likely be expecting him to come back with the loot, but he wouldn't have to. The captain led them straight toward the ship, following the main road through the market, but less than halfway through the market, dozens of immortals surrounded them, all with blades drawn. Oh, I knew this was going to be a good day. Yuan cheered, which made Kara laugh, and the captain smile at the excited dragon. She really liked that little guy. Carl equipped the Haint Claw and handed Kara the Blade of Champions as the group circled around them. So, are we going to have a big dramatic dialogue moment, or are we skipping straight to the part that makes the black dragon happy? The captain asked casually, her hand on the blade at her hip. Turn over the dragon and your storage rings. No need to lose your life over something so small. The leader of the group, an unassuming-looking blonde human man, demanded. Ray is going to be pissed that she missed this. Kara joked. Compared to a handful of idiots, I think that her decoration efforts are more interesting. Carl agreed. Damn it. I said turn over the dragon and the storage devices. Do you think this is a joke? The man shouted. The elf turned to look at Carl, who was petting Yuan's head. Yes. The group surged forward, and then the area vanished into an impenetrable miasma as the captain activated a shadow field ability. Then the screaming started. Carl summoned a pair of Oathbreakers, alongside the army of the dead, as spectral knights, as well as a group of lich lords as the undead minions. The haunting laughter of the undead mixed with the manic laughter of Yuan, who was seeing the glory of his patron for the very first time. Carl and Kara were using Soul Sight to find the attackers, but the real damage was being done by Oathbreaker and his damage mirroring ability that hit every one of the attackers at once. Carl parried a blade with a Haint Claw and then watched as a spectral knight impaled the man from behind, before throwing him off into the darkness. There was shouting in the distance as the crew of the elf's ship rushed to rescue them, but the fight was over before anyone could intervene. And that is how you deal with ambushers. You're a bit young for a system interface yet, but I will teach you the appropriate skills when you are old enough. Carl explained to Yuan, who was visibly vibrating with excitement as the tattered souls of the dead flowed through him. That is better than ice cream. Almost as good as roasted chicken. Yuan agreed as the captain dropped her barrier. Well, that is one way to do it. You can likely dismiss the undead. She informed Carl.
Right.
They freak people out. Carl let go of the undead, but kept Oathbreaker out as a pair of bodyguards for them. It wasn't really necessary. The entire ship's crew was already surrounding them with blades drawn, and the security force under Elder Malcolm had come to put an end to the hostilities. All right, what happened? The first mate demanded, looking down at the scattered corpses all over the market street. Ambushed. Failed robbery attempt. The captain shrugged. You or him? Both, it seems. They wanted my storage devices and the dragon. The newly arrived security team leader sighed as he heard that. Someone tried to steal a dragon from the Carl? They can't be local, or they would have known better. Quick question. How often do you get randomly attacked that you don't see that there is something seriously strange about this whole situation? 20 immortals. All waiting for you too, and nobody noticed anything odd beforehand? Nobody? Plus, the fact that they all died so quickly. There is definitely something off here, the security team leader noted. Good point. We should likely revive a few to see what's up, right? Carl suggested. The captain frowned. Are there any that can still be revived? I see a lot of soul damage here. What did you even hit them with? Do you know what a Haint Claw is? That would explain it. Assuming that you mean the living weapons the tree spirits forged with stolen soul essence, it would certainly account for the damage here. Well, some of it. I see that some of them have been much more brutally drained of vitality, but that appears to be the sword that the badger is wielding, judging by the height of the wounds. The only ones that haven't had their souls damaged are the ones that the demon lord killed. The guardsman shook his head in dismay. What sort of battle did he miss? The demon lord was somehow the one showing restraint, but he did note that the elf didn't include her own kills in the ones without soul damage, so she was no less kind to them than Carl was. I don't think that the fight is over. The voice in my head says things are about to get good. Yuan informed them. Oathbringer smiled giddily. Every time this guy summoned him, fun things happened. First, he got to fight Carnage. Now they were just going to massacre idiots in the middle of a market? With civilians around? The added difficulty level of protecting the uninvolved made the challenge worth it. Chapter 1686, Small Dragon, Big Trouble. If there is going to be big trouble, we should likely send you back home. You're a bit young to be joining in on the fight. That usually comes after the system activates. Carl noted. Kara shook her head. Don't send him back directly. They're waiting for you to expose the tiny world. I can almost guarantee it. That would make sense. They were after the captain's storage rings, which were a form of pocket dimension. So, they would likely be trying to track all similar magic, and that would reveal the tiny world to them if Carl activated the opening to it right now. So, do you think we should move to an open spot? Carl asked the captain. Yes, that sounds like a good idea. Someone, gather the bodies that can't be revived and bring back someone to question. I will move to the empty cargo area, away from the ship, the captain ordered. Kara handed Ewan a cupcake, and the little dragon happily munched as he rode Carl's shoulder to the site of the next likely battle. She passed the elf one as well, a special collaboration between Remy and Lotus that gave the target an enhanced regeneration rate, and the group waited in the empty cargo staging area for the inevitable attack. Ewan counted down on his claws for 3, 2, 1, 1, 1. There it was. A pair of ascended immortals appeared in front of them, blades drawn. Don't think that you can escape justice today, the new arrival declared, his tone dripping with disdain. Elder Malcolm ran over with the crew of the ship, but found them all blocked from the clearing by a barrier stronger than he could easily break through. Now, he wasn't one of the strongest elders, but he was an ascended immortal, and it shouldn't be that hard to break a barrier made by someone on his level, as these two were. Which meant that it was likely a supreme-ranked artifact, and Carl was in trouble. Or something like trouble. The elder had very little faith that Carl would actually lose a fight, even if he was down by over a full stage. You can't have my baby dragon, Carl retorted, while Ewan giggled hysterically. The two immortals seemed to take that as a personal insult, while the elf assumed that the little dragon had simply foreseen the outcome of this battle and found only good things. Carl summoned everything that he could, surrounding the battle in undead, and then transformed into cat demon form before handing the dragon to Kara. Keep that safe for me. And wiped the icing off his face. The immortals scoffed. They were so much more powerful than the undead horde that they didn't take it the least bit seriously. Only when Carl coated everyone in eternal lightning did they begin to consider that this might not be going their way. Just kill them already, the other insisted as he activated a series of defensive skills. Kara handed Ewan to Carl's epic guard, the Treant Dryad Assassin, who looked a lot like the Haint Claw's matured form. The epic guard simply shrugged and settled Ewan against her chest to watch the fight. She could shadow step if they got in trouble, which made her a decent choice to hold the little one. Even if she had no idea what was going on. She hadn't been out in a while. Now suddenly, there were baby dragons and immortals trying to kill them. But she was immortal now too, which was nice. In his transformed state, Carl towered over the two humans, who were now looking at him as if they had made some great revelation. If they thought that they would get some advantage by thinking that he was actually a demon, they were about to have an even worse day than expected. I'll go first, Oathbreaker declared, apropos of nothing. Then he vanished and reappeared directly over top of the immortals. Blades flashed as the two men fought desperately to stave off the fury of the 4 blades that each of the demons was wielding. Are we not going to help? The captain asked. Give them a moment. Oathbreaker enjoys his work, and they're not going to defeat him so fast. Even the undead were only creeping closer, while the 2 Sero-shaped greater golems had taken defensive positions on either side of the epic guard, instinctively defending the hatchling. Fuck, what are these? The immortal swore, before being swatted up against the barrier by Oathbreaker. Though the demon was technically much lower in power level than he was, it was so fast that one-on-one, they had no way to defeat him. They couldn't even get the time to activate their larger skills. However, they only needed half a second, and now he had it. An immensely powerful blade appeared overhead, only to vanish halfway to Oathbreaker, courtesy of Kara's Nullify. The demon winked at her, then rejoined the fight, leaving the attacker confused as to what had just happened. That was when Carl realized that they weren't the only ones fighting. There was a full-on battle happening outside the barrier, and he simply hadn't noticed because there were undead in the way. Quickly, he checked his interface and found that the clan had sent an all-members alert. New Home Merchant Clan is under attack by the Gralpedran Templars. One of the immortals activated a trinket by crushing it in his free hand, and 2 more immortals appeared in the barrier. Looks like that is our cue. Gentlemen, if you're looking for a challenge, you've come to the right place. System notice. The Darklight host has challenged the Gralpedran Templars to a guild war. The words appeared in the air overhead, and Carl's bestial armor shifted appearances, showing his guild tabard with its 3 golden challenge rings. Then Carl summoned the war banner and stuck it in the ground behind him. There was no way that the immortals would turn down the challenge now, not with such a blatant provocation right in front of them. War banner. Artifact grade large area spell. Spreads all of the user's combat buffs across an entire allied force. Usable only during times of war. Chapter 1687. Yuan knew. The newly arrived pair of immortals smiled, and one of them took out a flag to plant in the ground, though it wasn't a proper war banner. Oh, I get it now. This is why I was getting the tingles. Yuan realized. Some people were definitely going to die today. Carl ordered the undead to turn outward, smashing their way through the barrier and out into the larger battle between the Gralpedran Templars and the New Home Merchant Clan. The clan members didn't seem to realize that a guild war had been declared, but the moment that the barrier fell, Eternal Lightning and Carl's full suite of buffs, including Rampage and Limited Invulnerability, spread over the entire fighting force. That confused quite a few of them, who had been on the losing side of the fight only moments ago. But now their skills did massive amounts of damage, and strikes that used to seriously injure them barely left a scratch. It was an absolute advantage in such a large-scale battle. Then, the rest of the beasts and the elders from the tiny world arrived behind Carl. We should let you go out alone more often. Ray greeted him. Dana sighed. What happened? And who is this? They try to steal my baby dragon. She turned to Yuan, and the little dragon shrugged. He didn't know why, either. Surely, they didn't think that they had more to offer than the Carl did they? That was just silly talk, unbecoming of someone of their power. The immortal spun his sword, and Carl moved away from the group to take up the challenge, though it wasn't official. At least, not yet. You think that you can hold up against an elder immortal, whelp? I will shut down your arrogance right now. Claws met steel as the two clashed, and the elder retreated, his arm bleeding. Wisps of soul energy were being drawn from him to the Hank Claw as Carl circled, looking for an opening. Damnable demons, always using some sort of prohibited weapons. Kara frowned as her attempt to nullify. The man's next attack failed, and the elder's speed multiplied, letting him attack 10 times faster than he had been moving before. Even Oathbreaker was impressed with that skill, and Carl was completely outmatched by the speed. However, Carl did not have to rely on speed. Chaos Blast exploded outward from his body, torn open by the elder's blade, but searing his skin in return. Every attack caused an increasing stream of soul to be siphoned from the attacker, while Carl desperately tried to fend off enough of the attack skills that he didn't take any major damage. The battle would change quickly, and Ray was already fighting elsewhere, raising an army of blood golems from the corpses she created using blood destruction. Every death in the enemy army was another fighter for their side, and Rampage was continually stacking up damage buffs for the entire clan. As he siphoned the soul energy from the immortal, a faint realization formed in Carl's mind. He knew what a void immortal should be now, and the difference between that and an ascended immortal. He still had a long way to go before he could make the transition, but he no longer had any doubt that he would be able to ascend the moment that he had fully transformed his immortal spirit. A fine gift from an unexpected opponent. The air shook as the sky was torn apart by mighty skills, greater even than the apocalypse, hellfire that Hawk had conjured. The stalls of the market were shattered, and the boats in the harbor either damaged or sunk by the force. The clan leaders had joined the battle. With a pair of supreme-ranked combatants fighting overhead, suddenly the death toll on the surface looked somewhat benign. If the wards on the clan didn't hold, everything here would be destroyed in only a few strikes. Non-combatants and children were running for shelter, trying to get underground to the shelters before something happened to the buildings that they were in. But everyone else who could fight was in the streets, even some of the kids who were immortal in power level but not finished school yet. A true war had come to the clan compound, and that only had one outcome. You either won, or your clan ceased to exist. Behind Carl, Dana's army of golems was holding a beachhead in the battlefield, where the wounded could come to recover, as Tion and Leo had area healing abilities active. Carl lashed out with Chaos Vortex, and a crater formed in the Elder's chest, before slowly healing over. His speed increase was fading as the Soul Siphon exhausted him, and he couldn't parry all of Carl's attacks anymore. First, it was the Chaos Vortex, then a claw caught him across the chest. This was wrong, all wrong. He could tell that Carl was still in the early Void Immortal stage, while he was very nearly a peak Immortal. But he was being outmatched, and he couldn't understand why. The new Home Merchant clan had no such power. If they had the power to buff combatants to this level, the entire continent would have known. So, what had gone wrong? All over the battlefield, more combatants were arriving. The members of the Gralpedran Templars had all seen the notice that they were at war, and their compound in the city of Gralpedran, thousands of kilometers away, was emptying as well. Though the battle was at the New Home clan's territory, if the Templars lost the battle, New Home would come to wipe out the remnants of the Templars and loot their city. That was just how it was with wars in the immortal world. Unnoticed by either side, a blockade of anti-portal spells and immortals had formed halfway between New Home and Condom, exempting only the portals opened from Gralpedran. The Almixii sect had intervened, and declared that the war would not draw anyone's allies into the fray. They were ostensibly allied with both sides, and had no idea what had started the battle. But if the entire region mobilized, they would be forced to pick a side in this battle that they didn't wish to see started in the first place. And that meant losing members that they didn't need to lose. While the blockade caused many protests from the other allies, they were half-hearted. The Templars had gone to attack New Home, for whatever reason. Other than to uphold their contracts as allied forces, it didn't involve the other sects and clans. Chapter 1688. There would be war. The Elder staggered to one knee as the Soul Siphon intensified. He knew that this was the end for him. A few more seconds, and he wouldn't even have enough soul energy left to be resurrected from. That demon from the Darklight host had stolen everything from him, every century of carefully built power gone. Resentment flared in his eyes as clawed fingers removed his head from his shoulders, and Carl paused to catch his breath. Thor, Remy, and Kara were fighting another ascended immortal together, and slowly making headway. But Oathbreaker was nearly finished with the first two. The twin demons had simply exhausted their target, as Indomitable was in effect over the entire New Home force. Carl joined the battle again, moving to assist Thor, who was fighting in humanoid form, so that Kara and Remy's bodyguards could do their work. The Naga's healing totems were over by Tion and Dana's healing station, but her lightning attacks were deadly, and the flaming vortexes of Hellstorm had an uncanny way of sucking in enemy attack skills. Across the battlefield, every member of the New Home Merchant clan was able to fight nearly a rank over their abilities, thanks to the buffs of the War Banner. Only at the very top, the Ascended Immortals, did that gap begin to close with their strongest combatants. And in that category, the New Home Merchant clan was sadly outnumbered. The most formidable of them, elders like Fersham at the peak of immortality, were changing the balance, fighting 4 or 5 weaker elders at the same time. But that still wasn't enough to make up for the difference in power. It was the fight overhead that was going to change all of that. Empowered by Carl's declaration of war, the clan leader stared down the opposing clan leader, a disgusting man who had managed to drive every single woman from his sect with his vile attitude. Or, that was clan leader Nerissa's opinion of him. But the fact remained that his clan was entirely male and entirely disgusting, so there was little chance that he was wrong. "Come join my clan. We could use a new serving wench," he taunted, though she could see that he was stalling for time, unable to comprehend why his wounds weren't closing. "You've already lost, and you don't even know it. You're losing without me even touching you." Nerissa laughed, then gestured down below them, to where Carl had just eliminated one of the elders and was scratching something into a gemstone. Ancient wisdom let Carl transfer one skill that he, or his summons, knew to the full party. And for the purposes of a war, the entire guild was considered one raiding party. So, he had chosen to gift the clan with Rejuvenation, the area healing ability that Leo was growing quite fond of. Unlike the healing totems that Remy used, the effect wasn't stopped by damage, and it was much lower mana cost than Tion's Holy Light or Sacred Heal abilities. The little fox had both of them active, but it was the fact that he was playing Inspiration on the Zither that was making the most difference. At least, in this situation, where hundreds of clan members had area healing spells active, giving everyone a constant stream of health. It was a great day for the warriors, as they rarely had a use for all the energy that they could store. They simply didn't go through it fast enough, unless they were hurling attacks blindly at an enemy's guard. Having a healing spell was nearly as good as getting a whole new class. The clan leader of the Gralpedron Templars frowned at the sight. The new home merchants had come up with a devilish new trick that could keep their members alive despite being outnumbered and outclassed. What he didn't understand was how they were doing so much damage. He hadn't come all this way just to lose to a bunch of newbies who pulled mortals up to the immortal rank, disregarding every bit of common decency among the immortal world's residents. The mortals stayed mortals. They weren't meant to be anything more than servants to the immortal sex. It was supposed to be an easy win, with his members robbing all the newbies who left the clan compound this month, reducing their wealth before he moved in. How they had realized and turned it into a clan war, he didn't know. But it didn't matter. His force was still far superior, and his reinforcements should be here soon. None of the sects in the area would dare stand with New Home against him. There was no way that he could know that the reinforcements were not coming. The Almixii sect had decided that the Templars would have to win on their own this time, as New Home's alliances were not as weak as the Templars' sect leader had assumed. Still, even with the entire New Home clan constantly healing, the Templars held the upper hand through the first half-hour of battle, as the clash of the supreme-ranked clan leaders overhead shook the buildings and destroyed all the plant life for 100 kilometers. Compared to the side effects of their battle, Remy's apocalypse suddenly seemed quite reasonable and contained. Sure, the market was gone, but that was going to happen anyhow. Plus, using an ice apocalypse balanced out Hawk's flames, which were nearly everywhere at this point. The Dark Flame Phoenix had uncanny accuracy, and he had been hitting invaders with flaming meteors like he was throwing fireballs. The only thing that was still standing at this point was the interior of the clan compound, and even that was marginal. The outer barriers had failed at some point, but the inner barriers on particular buildings and the core infrastructure of the clan were still holding strong. Remy thought about helping with that, but she didn't know where the barrier controls were, and even if she did, one Remy was not enough to keep that barrier up when dozens of immortals were attacking it, and it was taking secondary damage from the battle between clan leaders. Fortunately, they had added extra barriers over their own building so that their apartment wasn't bothered by strangers. Chapter 1689. Almixii Challenged. The sect master of the Almixii sect looked on helplessly as a group of Supremes advanced toward him. Sect leader, don't you think it's a bit heavy-handed to deny us the right to support our allies? You might be the strongest of us and the strongest clan in the region, but you're not the match for all of us. We have our alliances, and we're going to go assist the Templars in their effort to restore the proper state of things. Fine, if that is what you want, but be aware that if you enter, I will also let the allies of the New Home clan enter. The Almixii sect is allied with both sides of this conflict, and as such will be sitting out this battle. There was immense potential in the imminent devastation of the region, he decided. If all these clans lost powerful members, or even a few of their clan leaders, he could lead his force to take over even more territory, establishing branch offices of the sect all over the region. It wasn't on his strategic checklist of sect goals for this decade, but if the opportunity was so forcefully presented to him, there was no reason for him not to. The clan leaders raised their hands and made a forward gesture toward their troops, then vanished off into the distance, leaving the Almixii sect leader behind. Well, Nerissa, you crazy woman, I hope that you have a plan for this because your allies are not on the stronger side of this force, he muttered, then returned to watching the defensive line. At the very least, he could keep out the leeches who just wanted to settle vendettas. On the battlefield, Ray smiled as her blood destruction skill gave her dozens more immortal rank golems. The bonuses they were getting had turned them into an unstoppable force, and the pure terror on the faces of the Templars when their own allies died then turned on them was worth every bit of effort needed to ensure that blood destruction got the last hit. While the fact that she couldn't finish them with a stab or a 3 was annoying, the golems were getting such a great response that she couldn't resist. Then, a whole wave of new people started to arrive. They all had blue armbands on, marking their allegiance to someone. But Ray had no idea whose side they were on until they started to assist the Templars. That meant, "Hello, new friends. Would you like to join my art exhibition? I call it Templars on Ice." The group of immortals in front of her looked confused for a second. Then Thor activated Bulwark, using the ice element under their feet, turning the whole area into a skating rink. Ray's spiked legs easily dug into the slick surface, and she charged with her golems, before vanishing into an incorporeal form to begin the real attack. Blood flew from the back ranks of the newcomers as they realized this battle was not what it seemed. While they should have had the superior numbers, crushing the new home clan nearly 5-1, the newbies were fighting like they were possessed, and even their youngest members were taking down fighters far above their own rank. It was well known that the defenders would always fight their hardest until the last moment, when the survivors would flee, but this was on another level. In the sky above the main battle, clan leader Nerissa threw up new barriers and tried to decide if she should send the retreat signal or let the new home clan decide when to run on their own. The fight between clan leaders had become 7 supremes against 1, now that the other peak powers of the region had arrived. For her alone, there was simply no possibility of winning. And once she had fallen in battle, there was nobody who could take up her position, no matter how strong the buffs were. She had just prepared herself for her final stand when the air tore open beside her, and a group of 10 supreme-ranked humans in black and white robes stepped through. The Darklight host has once again hoisted the war banner, and we have come. The leader of the group, an elven girl with the face of a young teen, despite her immense power, declared. For a second, nobody could understand what she meant. Then they saw the flag at the epicenter of the battle, standing proudly at the center of an island of calm, surrounded by corpses. It held the same black and white emblem, with a pair of dragons overlaid on the divided field, that the emblems on the outfits of the new Supremes did. What sort of clan had come to support the new home, that they could field 10 Supremes without a single one of them having a clan leader tag on their name? But Nerissa had other questions. Like, how deep was Carl's backing that these people came to his aid when he raised his battle flag? They hadn't even come to extract him and his friends, they had come to join the battle. The clan leaders didn't hold back. If they gave this new group time to prepare, it would only get harder to defeat them. Beneath their battle, Carl fought desperately to keep the enemy away from the healing areas. They were pushing hard to get at Dana and the clerics, who had gathered in the area for healing that needed more than the rejuvenation effect that had spread across the entire battlefield. Despite their advantage, there were thousands of such injuries and hundreds more resurrections to be done. Both sides had set up healing encampments on the battlefield, and Ray had recruited a team of rogues to make her way towards the enemy's healers. But there were so many immortals between them and their target that it was taking forever. Then, a high-pitched scream informed Carl that things had gone horribly wrong. Someone with a stealth skill had broken through the lines and had attacked his greater golems, aiming for the epic guard holding Ewan, who they thought was the source of their problems, as he was the only one in the area who wasn't doing anything. The assumption was that he was upholding the area buff. But really, he was exactly what he looked like. An overly excited hatchling with no reason to be in the middle of a battlefield. Chapter 1690. Get to the safe spot. The epic guard's arm was severed by the blade of an ascended immortal, and the first of the Sero-shaped greater golems fell, while Ewan was tossed into the dirt, bleeding from his wing. The little black dragon only had one thought: get to the safe spot.
And there was only one safe spot around: Carl.
The little dragon dove under the falling body of an immortal, and between the legs of his remaining defender, the second greater golem, who was stalwartly defending the hatchling that he had been tasked with. Despite the wound that had cost her arm, The epic guard fended off 3 immortals at the same time, giving him time to escape, just as she had been ordered when the small dragon was handed to her. A kick from the ascended immortal sent the construct sliding across the dirt, right before the attacker screamed in agony, clutching his face. "You like that? I'll claw your eyes out," Yuan shouted, driven to defend his new friend. A backhand swat sent him flying across the battlefield, but in the direction of Carl, where he was hoping to go anyhow. Carl blasted the enemies around him out of melee combat, and then called a fresh epic golem to him as he caught the little dragon. But before he could hand Yuan off, the little dragon vanished, aiming for the safest of safe spots. A separate space linked to Carl that smelled like home. Only, he didn't successfully enter the tiny world. He ended up floating in the void. Where is this? Oh, I see. It's just dark out. I don't know how to make light. Then, a sun appeared in the void around him, and Yuan realized how this worked. There was nothing here that Carl needed to add at all. That was fine. He could do that whenever he had time. Carl shook his head and sighed as he activated All Things Are Pets and created a pet space for the little dragon before Yuan's ill-conceived attempt to move between realms left him somewhere random. That was a close call. He had nearly broken the god's prohibition on having a baby dragon when Yuan tried to merge with him. Only he did have one, didn't he? It wasn't the same sort of bond as his beasts, but he could still sense all of Yuan's thoughts while he was in the pet space. The little dragon was nearly regenerated from his injuries already, which were mostly just some bruises and a torn wing. But he was safe and alive, and that was what mattered to the hatchling. Going to the Carl was definitely the right choice. Carl and the epic guard were too busy to do anything about his situation at the moment, as they were being swarmed by immortals who realized that he had hidden the black dragon in a separate space. If they could get him back out of there, or kill the one stabilizing the space, they were certain that they could deactivate whatever buff he had spread over the battlefield. The fact that he had retreated at the first sign of attack proved to them that they had the right target, and the Black Dragon was the source of the unnaturally strong fighters in the New Home clan's defense force. With the epic guard at his back, Carl only had to fight in one direction. A definite improvement, but not enough to give them a complete advantage when there were so many new ascended immortals around. Worse, he was being flooded with soul energy by the Haint Claw and the Sword of Champions, which was now in Thor's possession. He had given it to Kara, but apparently she had decided that she didn't need it, or she wanted to use a different weapon. Carl didn't know which, but she had given the soul-stealing weapon to the behemoth. The Badger was in the city, defending the remaining buildings from the invaders with the assistance of an entire unit of Seraphim summoned by one of the Dark Light host reinforcements. They were all supreme ranked and equivalent in quality to an epic golem. They had skills, and they were excellent at flying. Not only that, but they also had defensive barriers to protect the buildings and big swords that Rey would love to get her hands on. Onward, Seraphim. There is order to spread, Kara announced, which made the Seraph nearest to her laugh. If there was anything that the Badger was going to spread, it was not in any way ordered or regulated. They were beings of order, and they were sent by their summoner to reinforce this place so that the allies of the Dark Light host had somewhere to return to after the battle. But they had zero faith that the Badger was on the same page as they were, even if their goals were the same. Fortunately, they didn't have to do much. They were stronger than the attackers coming for the city, and that would let them hold their assigned zone without needing to have their summoner replace them. With everything going so well, it didn't matter that they couldn't figure out what the Badger was planning. But she wasn't causing them any trouble, so they just let Kara wander as she pleased. The Badger had a goal. The vast majority of the buildings were destroyed, and the enemy's immortals were trying to take advantage of the situation. The Seraphim were eliminating the ones that threatened the city, but they weren't going after the ones who were looting. Looting was her territory. Plus, if it came off an enemy, she wasn't stealing from her clan members, right? She could donate the vast majority of it back, and they would call her benevolent. It was a brilliant plan. She couldn't keep the good or personal things, but she could get recognition for giving people their stuff back. That had to be worth something for her reputation. With the battle shifting and the immortals pressing in on the healing center, it was time for Leo to shift to his natural state from his humanoid form. He could use all sorts of skills as a small turtlein, but when it came to actual combat, he was simply too small. Being a gigantic turtle caused other troubles, but it was incredibly satisfying to simply flip or slap people who came for him.